My guest today is Vinita Gursahani Singh, founder and managing trustee of We the People Abhiyan. Vinita has over 28 years of experience in social development, focusing on livelihoods, human rights, and active citizenship. She advocates for constitutional awareness and is dedicated to empowering individuals by equipping them with the skills and knowledge to address their own challenges. Vinita holds a management degree from SP Jain Institute, Mumbai in India, and an MSc in Social Policy and Planning from the London School of Economics. Vinita is exposing a critical blind spot in our approach to civic duty, challenging us with the urgent question, why don't you do something about it yourself? After learning about her impactful work, Viren and I felt compelled to support We the People Abhiyan and contribute to positive change through active citizenship. I only wonder why it took me so long to recognize the Atlanta in Vinita. Hi, Vinita. Welcome to Atlanta Diaries, and thank you for doing this conversation.
Hi, Anma. It's so wonderful to be here, and all my conversations with you have been so enlightening. And today, I'm really looking forward to ours here.
So, at the outset, take a bow because we need more people like you in this country. I think let's just start from this gap. When did you recognize this gap in constitutional awareness, and what compelled you to address it?
Sure. Actually, the gap was illuminated just with myself. I realized that I had not fully appreciated the powers that our Constitution gives us to make a difference. So I have always looked at injustice or felt it in my belly and did something about it. And I devoted a lot of my life to that causes where I could make a difference. But it was only much later where I was having this conversation with my friend, Seema. It was like a reading of the preamble to the Indian Constitution. We just sat down, looked at each of the words, and the words that came alive for me were that we, the people of India, give to ourselves this constitution. And it's like a direction for us to secure rights, not just for yourself, but for other people, everyone else. So we secure for all citizens justice, equality. And I think for me, that moment was so powerful. I felt like I had this with me all the time, and I did not realize that I could use it. The words, the license, because all your life you're told that this is not something you do normally. You don't stand and fight for all these things. And here is a document which tells you, you must do that. And not just me, each one of us must stand up for the other, right? We are in a society that's ridden with inequalities. But here is something which tells us, you know what? There's a direction of justice and equality, and we have to work towards it. So it just gave me a license to bring my own voice to everything I do. And that's it. I thought if this is what it means to me, maybe it'll make sense to a lot of other people. And that's how this journey with We the People Abhiyan also began for me. So it was very much a personal revelation. And you absolutely right by calling it a blind spot. Because when it's working, you just ignore it. And for others, because you see it broken in so many ways. So the advantages are not clear, the disadvantages are too clear. So it's something like that.
So obviously there is this conditioning or understanding that everybody has to look at themselves and, literally mind their own business. So it's a mindset change. Like the cause or the need seems to be really huge. So did that overwhelm you?
So it is overwhelming because of the social conditions and conditioning, both. And it's not also we became independent and suddenly we were another set of people.
Hmm.
I think we're very conscious, even when we got independence, that we have only got a level of political democracy,
Right.
right? That
Hmm.
one person, one vote. Yeah. But there are so many things which come in the way of this one person, one voice. And so social democracy really is about over a period of time,
Yep.
people changing for themselves and for others. So it's overwhelming or challenging in a fundamental way because there is all this that exists within us, right? Discriminatory practices that we have been conditioned to follow, a mindset of beneficiary of the state because we always engage with the state as givers
Yep.
and not us as owners,
Hmm.
right? And of course, caste, class, women, our ways and practices. So mindsets take time.
Absolutely.
For example, in some of our conversations, the number of times, women especially have come up and said that for the first time we realized that keeping separate utensils for our house help. We thought we are progressive. We treat people equally, but there is a fundamental practice. And it was just that trigger, that something happened and said, I'm just going to make sure this goes out of my home. And sometimes it's just that. And information also is a very, very important piece. How do you solve a problem? How do you get a birth certificate? Or how do you get a death certificate? At a level you think this is information that you just go on to Google and you should be able to do this, right? But there is lack of information. And then combine it with this whole mindset that actually nobody is there to help you,
Right. Right.
the
Right.
system is not working for you.
Hmm.
So the same thing exists in a far bigger degree, I would say, in the rural areas. Because
Hmm.
to find out what is your village panchayat doing is still quite difficult.
Hmm.
What local self-government institutions are meant to be doing, what are the entitlements available, how can you access them, how can you write an application to your panchayat. These are the sort of practical things one works with. But the underlying thing is challenging ourselves to be owners, really owners. Yeah.
Honestly, in the larger scheme of things, this feels like the easier one to do, because once you've got the buy-in, once you've got that sense of, okay, I want to take control of this, I'll figure out
Yes.
how to do it. So you said at a very early age, you saw injustice, right? And you want to do something about it, but you sort of held back.
Yeah. I think when you look around, there are so many levels where you feel in your heart something is wrong.
Hmm.
I was going in a train from Mumbai to Delhi, and that was, of course, a privilege, right? So it was 24 hours at that
Right,
time.
right.
You have better trains now. I was about 14 or 15, and the girl who was with us in the compartment, she was, you talk, right? You become friends in this journey.
Yes.
And I realized that she was only a couple of years older to me, but she was married and she had been married to someone she didn't know. And this marriage was not something she wanted. And I was almost the same age and I was going to have some fun. And this girl was going to her in-laws' place. And she was literally weeping when she was going out of the train. And I thought, this is wrong.
Yeah.
And my parents, we should do something about this. She's not happy. And they were like, listen, this is not something you can do anything about.
Hmm.
And don't even think about it because this is their private matter, etc. And I think it was very silly of me at that time to maybe think that I could hold her back or do something. But I just felt very powerless, at that time. And at other times also, girls not being able to express themselves, because you do feel that sense of sisterhood. And because you're so young, people do tell you, don't do this, and you can't say anything. But if there is violence in that private matter, I feel everyone has the right to intervene,
Hmm.
right? And I felt that quite strongly. And so after a point, I just thought, no, it is my business to say something. And maybe the persons concerned also may have a choice about not, going to the police or whatever it might be. But certainly I can make my voice heard. I think very early on, I felt it is my business to bring my voice to the table.
Did you always foresee, therefore, a career in the development sector?
Yes, I think I was maybe 18 or 19 or at that age where I was pretty clear that I wanted to work in the area of being able to do this day in and day out, right?
Hmm.
I really wanted my life to be about this. So it gave me energy. And I think the development sector and people in the NGO sector gave me that space very early on. Yeah.
So take us through that journey of 20 years when the next pivotal point was the garage and your conversation with Seema, right?
I think if you start with that premise that, I want to be active in this way, then life and your career gives you enough opportunities to do that.
Right. Yeah.
If you seek that out, right? For instance, I think I was 20 or 21, and I went to Tilonia, which is this village at that time, really small. And there was an organization there called Social Work and Research Center. And I went there to intern, right?
Hmm.
Trying to see how schools were working in that district, and finding that so many schools had been turned into some kind of a shop running there, but children were not there, teachers were not there. And that gave me a real sense of how just access was such a big issue. You may want to do so many things, but if you do not have access, you do not know about what you can do, and then later on working with women who wanted to better their lives, had the skill to do that, but not having the access to understanding how markets work.
Hmm.
But all the while, I realized that if we could work on information and mindsets,
Hmm.
transformation is possible. But I feel in those years, I was always looking at it from the lens of what we in the NGO sector could do.
Hmm.
But that changed a lot when the movement towards the right to information happened in India.
Right.
And suddenly it became clear that the state is that duty holder, right?
Right.
And we need to fight or challenge for access with this machinery. I'll give you an example. When we was working in a tribal area in Maharashtra, and we were, of course, providing for many aspects of access. For instance, how do you grow summer crops, improve livelihoods, for instance, or, access better health facilities. And as you know, the sector is always challenged with a limited budget. But in the same years, the Tribal Development Society returned about 1 crore of rupees to the center because they couldn't spend that money.
Wow. Interesting.
And it just hit me that, of course, we must continue to do
Mhm.
all this, but we have to work with the state machinery, which in fact we have instated, right? And therefore, again, that feeling that as right holders. So those 20 years were about many experiences.
I think what I'm hearing is those were almost like the foundation of what led to Abhiyan in a sense, right?
Yes.
How do you think your childhood and your upbringing created this passionate person wanting to make so much difference in the social sector?
I think I was very, very privileged to have a family that enabled a lot of discussion. And, my father helped me think. But what he helped actually more was that he always took me along during my holidays to where he was traveling and working. And that was a lot with farmers in the northeastern part of the country, in the central part, Madhya Pradesh, for instance. So I was experiencing all the conversations he was having with farmers, others, and I just realized that there was this huge disparity between, for instance, their children were around, I was interacting with them, and I have to say my parents were a pretty interesting set of people. My sister was married in Delhi, and I was only, I think, 10 or 11, and the Rajdhani had started, which was there was a chair car. You could sit in the evening, and the next morning you reach Delhi, right? And they put me on this train on my own and told this guy next to me in the chair car, said, just, sort of look out for her. So they said bye to me at Bombay Central in Mumbai, Bombay. And my sister picked me up. So I had this fantastic journey where, of course, I didn't listen to this neighbor guy. He was so worried about me. I got off at every platform. And so I got a taste of freedom very early on, and I was not going to give it up, right? After you've tasted that kind of freedom. So, yeah.
In hindsight, have you gone and explored that question with them? You weren't worried about me, or?
No, they just thought I could take care of myself, and they had immense belief in the goodness of people. And I think that's a very important state of mind. I know that there's all kinds of, precautions and things you must be aware of. But if you essentially believe that people will be helpful, I think that it gives you a mindset that is positive.
Very true.
I know sometimes it is foolish, but I think I'm highly positive. And it takes a lot for me to feel like nothing is going to happen.
Let's shift gears then, Vinita, and tell me, how did you, provide leadership to the initiative, and how did it evolve?
So the goal was to empower all citizens using the Constitution and its rights and framework, but empowering citizens to think that there could be equal, just society and make things happen towards. And it was about empowering all citizens. This was therefore a process of transformation, and all within the context of a society where it's very easy to think that things don't work and, life is very, very unfair. And of course it is. And discrimination against women at very, very elementary stages is a very real thing. For instance, when I was working again in Igatpuri, there was a man, I was talking to him when he was not able to access medicines. He had made a choice that his wife may not actually be able to live long enough, right? So, there is these choices. You cannot wish them away. You cannot oversimplify them. Although there's an idealism to it, it is in the context of hard reality. And so what we were seeking was some way to help a transformation. And working with people and created a program which was around empowering citizens to feel this ability for transformation. And so this became like a capacity building program. Then we looked at who could be trained to take this forward to other people in the community. So we sort of had a training of trainers kind of a mechanism to enable change at the community level. So many organizations who are working on health, education, many different issues, we basically train the cadre of people to say, bring in this idea that we can empower ourselves, right? And here's this constitution and the framework by which we can do so. So all of us were working on the same thing, but the empowering mechanism that was available to us and the realization that we can make it happen was what we wanted to infuse. So I think till date we've trained about 6,000 or more people in places where they are able to effect change in the community.
Community. So you gave them a much more powerful tool to go and make the same change. Is that the right way to see it?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Mm.
I'll give you an example. How would you write a letter, right, to your panchayat or to the block development officer? How would you do that? Now, one mindset thing here also is most of us speak, right? We don't write, right? And especially imagine that in the rural situation where you can't write so many times, right? So you go, you feel frustrated, you scream, shout, come back. The system doesn't really respond to that.
Yeah.
So we actually sit down and write an application. Now, for many people, that was the most liberating thing because, first of all, you put down something that bothers you and you use the language of the Constitution. It's not a matter of that I'm not getting, 35 kilos of ration that we are supposed to be getting, or the teacher should be coming to school, but she doesn't come, right? Or there's no toilet in the school. This is how you experience something. But when you link it with the fundamental right to life, which is again written somewhere in a document, you suddenly realize that it's not something I'm asking just because I am entitled to. So just writing Article 21, I have the right to a life of dignity, is a very empowering experience. And I have to show you some of these applications. They would start the application by saying Seva Mein, which means I am in service of you.
Yeah. So the whole perspective is that they're doing me a favor.
Exactly. Can you imagine writing application for your demand by saying Seva Mein, right? So fundamentally, through that one page, you move mindsets and you also build the skill to demand your right. And the number of women who then carry that and then carry photocopies of the Constitution to the block development officer and say that it's coming from here. And so that's the vehicle that has enabled we the people to reach out to communities that otherwise we would not have been able to reach out.
I'm just wondering, probably even those government officers, maybe for them also it's a shock to see that they can ask and demand so much.
Yes, absolutely. Because you see, I don't think this is a blame thing here. And I'm not discounting, there's a lot of corruption, there's a lot of active use of power to not provide the benefits people are rightfully entitled to. But in many cases, the functionaries don't know. So actually, it enables people to use the same language and sort of enables a playing field, slightly level playing field. There has also been, for instance, women coming back or saying that they thought that we have gone through a legal course or something.
Right, exactly.
How did you know about this constitution and how do you know this word? And it's a long word, right? It's a little heavy word, but it's an incredibly powerful word.
Beautiful, yeah.
Yeah.
So how did you break it down into those smaller steps? Because otherwise it would have been impossible to take on and embark on this mission.
So if 75 years back, the framers of the Constitution could dream of a society that was just, free, and equal, I think that we could also do that. And today we have more powers and more abilities to do that. But it was very clear to us that we must work with at the beginning, because yes, you have to break it down
Exactly.
with communities that are experiencing marginalization,
Mm.
right? And that marginalization gives you energy to ask and to demand something, right? When you feel something in your gut, you are far more likely to say, you know what, my back is to the wall. Now there's only one way, and that's forward. So we work largely with women,
Mm.
with young people who have a lot of fire. We also work with Dalit communities. We work with or geographical disadvantages, locational disadvantages, or people in the Northeast for whom, for instance, there is an active feeling of there are these cultures that are so unique and bring so much to the table, but our voices are not heard. And we have partners who are working in those communities and see the value of bringing this towards the larger aim of empowering citizens and not really appearing as service providers. All of us in over all these years have understood democracy as being able to at least once in 5 years make, you know, sort of express ourselves. And
Yeah.
I mean, our elections are absolutely mind blowing. So I don't think we can even take our political democracy for granted. People think a lot and have the agency. Sometimes it's just blurred by some things. Also, I just want to bring this in that the partners that we work with also provide the social cohesion, right?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
It's very difficult to think of you as an individual who stands out there. But if you have a community that works together, in many of these places, young people go together
Mm.
to the development officer or to the municipal corporation. Women go together, 7 or 8 at a time. You know, it's this social kind of cohesion and the solidarity that also is a very important, because it's going to be a lonely battle. It's also going to be sometimes a battle where there's going to be a lot of pushback. And so you have to be able to have the safety net for people to sustain the charge. Yeah, so there's that kind of breaking down into smaller steps for us to be able to do that in a sustained manner.
Share with us some impact stories, Vinita.
Yeah. Sometimes I feel like I'm in the company of champions. I was just talking with someone called Poonam Sahu, and she has just found so much power in using the power of these applications for a range of things. So she has been working with women in her community, in her village, and enabling change in a multitude of ways. So she, in fact, was telling me that every year she and her friends, they file more than 100 applications,
Love it. Yeah.
and therefore ensuring that pensions come to them, ration comes to them. So suddenly she believes that her village or her panchayat has benefited immensely from the work that has happened and the initiative she and her group of friends has taken. It's also at a very personal level. You can do all these things outside, right? But I think the most powerful thing is when you start thinking about, if it's supposed to be equal for everybody, then what am I doing in my personal space to ensure equality? Right? So if I feel in my gut that I've not been treated equally, then someone is feeling it in their gut when I'm not treating them equally. This is a very important change that I have experienced myself, of course, but also with the people that we work with. So, for instance, when these group of women do all these battles with the state together, many of them were not sitting together because they belong from different castes. They were not eating together. For instance, if the group meeting is in a temple, then some people will not sit inside the temple, they will sit outside, right? This is a group that's operating for their rights, but internally, they have not looked at what it means in the behaviors that they have exhibited. And for me, the biggest impact was where in meetings like this, they said, we really thought that we have to sit together.
Wow. Amazing.
This is where the change comes in, right?
Yeah, transformation.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing is that in a panchayat, you know that there is a reservation now for women to be sarpanch, meaning the leader of the panchayat.
Right. Right.
There is also Dalit leaders who become, sarpanches. But in the milieu that we have, even if woman is a sarpanch or a Dalit is a sarpanch, he or she will sit down on the floor, right? And in the space that people operate, this is usual. So get on with the other stuff. But the number of times now this is being challenged that if everybody sits, then they all sit down, or everybody brings up some chair or the other and we all sit together. Now, this, to my mind, women, when they demand this, and men, when they understand this, I think to me, that's the biggest change because you can never close your eyes now. And there's a long journey, but I think these are some of the things I value as impact that we have helped sort of just provide some trigger towards. Yeah.
Let's unpack one more thing. I want to go into the urban setting. I feel at some level, we also have this mentality to find the easy way out because we just want to get the job done, right? Have you made any initiatives in the urban settings? Sort of love to understand. And in fact, for you to use this platform to, maybe communicate that mindset need or mindset shift even in the urban setting.
Yes, there are a number of very, very fundamental movements that have emerged in urban areas, right? To save our forests, to save our green spaces, to ensure that our communities are safe for everyone, street lights, all these commons. So I think the main thing is that where there is a realization that there is something that needs to be done, We the People Abhiyan has worked very closely with it could be 2 people, 5 people, but we've worked very closely. So, for instance, in Gurgaon, we have worked very closely with citizen groups here, have been, for instance, saving the Aravlis. We have the oldest range here, and they're starting with 10, 15 people. Now it's a big group of people who are actively working towards protecting the forest there. And this starts from even challenging the fact that, this is not defined as a forest. And also, how is it that our women, girls can walk the streets in the night and there's safety out there? So I think the only thing that is needed for us to work with people is a will to see that, there is something that's needed and we will want to work towards that.
Vinita, do you think schools also need to do something different to help people understand at the root level? Clearly, there was something wrong in our education system where we did not recognize that, we can do more with it.
Yes. We worked with a number of schools where we trained teachers to bring in this aspect and this whole part of the curriculum into the existing curriculum, which is social and political life. And that had a lot of magic as well. Young people took up issues like there is no community library in Gurgaon. And some of them realized that, you need a space for people to come in and study, for instance, for civil services and many other things. So they worked with the administration to make sure that a budget is put aside for the community library, and it finally came up. And thank you for asking me this question, because a lot of the work that we've done in urban spaces have come from students and the younger community who wanted to make a change happen. And as I said to you, that once you discover how to use it, there is no stopping you. And the power of stories of transformation,
Yes,
right?
yes, yes.
Right? That's the power. I learn from the stories that come up on Atalanta Diaries,
Mm.
right? And there have to be enough of these stories of transformation for us to believe that, yes, if she can do it, I can too. And that is also something that we work with a lot through social media, but through other ways to communicate these stories of change. And there are thousands of them. Today we are standing on the shoulders of many men and women who have struggled and fought for our rights.
So true.
Why aren't we talking about these stories? And when we talk about these stories, you and I will also believe that I can do something.
Vinita, you are such a positive person. Clearly, that's what has brought you where it has. Having said that, there could even be some risks or challenges in your work, right?
I think they're very real risks, because this is all happening in a very real world where when you stand up, you will be asked to step down, push back, because there is an existing power there. You are going to now challenge the person who's running the ration shop, for instance, could be a relative, right? And you're challenging a relative, someone from your family, or could be challenging an existing status quo. There will be pushbacks, and the real thing is violence. You may be pushed back violently. For instance, there is some amount of privilege that comes with being able to speak the way we do, etc. But when we are working with slums or with women in slums here, for instance, there was a real issue of the ration shop owners coming together and restricting by force. Or when, for instance, a slum is broken down and you're standing out there with the people there, you will be pushed back with lathis. It's not just please move away, ma'am, or anything like that, right? So the threat can come from your family also. For instance, one of the women that we worked with, very strong, powerful, was beaten up by her husband to say, "Tum kar kya rahi ho? Who do you think you are?" Because she was becoming very strong in her presence, effecting a lot of change in the community. But then at home, you know, don't tell me who, don't tell
The
me you're the
boss.
boss here.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So just
Mm.
stay in your place here. And I'm not saying that the husband is bad, but there is a context here
Mm.
of power imbalance, and you have to navigate it every day, every moment. And we have to help people navigate that. So, how do you navigate all that? You have to be pretty real about it. And sometimes you have to take your chance, and sometimes you have to say, another day, I'm going to fight this, but another day. And that level of understanding what you can do in that moment is also something that you have to equip yourself with.
Mm. So, how did you create this tribe, and were you never scared personally about all these situations and potential risks?
When you stand up in front of the police with their obvious power, it is scary. I don't think one can deny that at all. But I don't think it has, sort of immobilized me. That has not happened.
Mm.
And that is only because I know that there's enough of the tribe, and I have faith that even the people who are carrying on their responsibilities as duty, bearers, find their responsibility from the same document that I am also using the language of. So I do believe in that. And in the moment you do feel that fear, but you sort of, prepare yourself. but I know that I have felt scared. I would be wrong in saying that I haven't. And I have felt scared for the people in the tribe also, and therefore the only answer is the tribe has to grow.
What about pushback from the family?
Uh, I think they now know that there is a community of people that supports as well, right?
Mm.
I think there would be far more pushback if they believed that there was this only one person, right? But there is more than one. And I think that they understand that. So there must be some fear. I'm very sure of that. But I haven't experienced real pushback, I have to say, in a sense of saying, don't go out there. It's always been take care. Are you prepared enough? Is someone with you? So those are the concerns more than don't do it. And I will do it, right? So they also know that.
So, Vinita, the development sector is more often than not driven by passion. I mean, I can hear so much passion and energy in this conversation at 6:30 in the morning that it's just so inspiring and infectious. And this work I know is all consuming. So my question is, how do you strike a balance between your professional commitments and is there a personal life beyond that? And especially given the fact that right now you're living in a city which is not the same city as where your spouse lives.
Um, okay. So I'm not sure I'm trying to strike a balance. Yeah. I think I'm in service of what's important in the moment. And so I very much operate from the need that is existing in that time. I don't have an aspiration of striking a balance. I told you right at the beginning, this is my life. My personal life, my professional life is all intermingled. And I'm very conscious of my own journey in this whole path of justice, equality. So I just feel like what I'm doing is for me. It's not really for somebody else in that sense. I mean, I don't know how to explain to you this, that even this whole thing of being with people who feel strongly and champion their causes is my need to be with people like that, right? So if all the time I'm only trying to find people like that and I'm with them and I am doing what is important to me, I am balancing my life. I mean, this is it, right? I don't know. There is this saying, right? Even in a marriage, you have to be like two pillars, but you're holding something up together. It's Gibran who said that, Khalil Gibran. But you have to be apart. So if I need my freedom and my space and my voice, equally does Hardeep and my children. They are also my children and husband and daughter and son, but they are citizens and people in their own right. So therefore, that space is also very important. I don't know if I'm making sense, but the whole of my life is about how these things play out.
I appreciate your honesty and candidness. And my question to you is, how would you inspire, Gen Z or a millennial to consider a career in the social sector?
I work with a lot of young people. And so I think the inspiration has to come from demonstrating. And you can't be an armchair and you have to be out there doing things yourself. The other thing I think is that the stories from the past, the number of young people who get excited by the story of the making of the Indian Constitution, that 300 people sat there 3 years trying to make this document. Not many young people know it, but when they do, they understand what it takes to make something happen, right? It's not easy. And I think that is something that I constantly say, that I don't know who told us that just because we have this democracy, things are just going to happen. No, it's not going to happen. So I think I constantly tell young people it's not going to be easy, sort of preparing themselves to sort of stick it in and know that there are going to be many successes. And you must celebrate the success,
Yes.
the tiny successes.
Mm.
So also with young people to, just say, stop, just let's appreciate the gray and find that silver lining, and just, have a good cup of chai or coffee or whatever they want. Let's celebrate together. So that's very important. And this is a bit of an advice, but also to say that we are in it for the long run.
Mm.
Okay. This is a country that is going to be there for us, for our future, for the future generations, and we are pivotal in the change today, but we will not be there and tomorrow, and that this is a long run. So we just turned 75 as a republic this year, and young people must know that the next 75 years are theirs. So it's a long, long haul.
You're raising or sort of helping people understand the urgency of also the situation, right? So, as the leader who's driving this amazing initiative, what does We the People Abhiyan look like 10 years from now or 5 years from now?
It seems to us that there needs to be a number of people who want to make the change happen and must know how to make it happen. And we need an ecosystem, a solidarity group to make that happen, right? And then it's like a self-sustaining, system that we can always work in the future for. So we actually want to, in every district, have a number of people whose capacities are so enhanced and empowered that their communities are able to then build on this power to take things forward. You see, there's this fantastic thing. There is a system that exists, and there are citizens who will always want to do something more. So there are 766 districts in India, right? And at a district level, if we are able to have a number of people, 50, 100, 150, who are, able to effect change in their communities, transfer their learnings, infect that inspiration, then I think we would be, in a way, looking at a nation where transformation is in place. So there is a plan. And there are so many organizations who will be the containers and the ecosystem for this change to happen. So we will see how that goes.
Beautiful. Thank you, Vinita. This was absolutely amazing, mind-opening, huge learning for me, myself, and I feel even more charged and hope that Viren and I can keep supporting you in this amazing initiative.
Thank you so much. It was very interesting and so energizing, galvanizing. I think your questions are fantastic. Help you think and help you act as well. So thank you very much for this.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, do hang on for just one more minute. I have a request for you. If you haven't already, please subscribe to Atlanta Diaries on Spotify, iTunes, or whichever platform you follow. Do join us in our mission to empower and inspire by sharing the podcast with a friend or colleague. It will be great if you can share on the social media platforms you follow, be it LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, or any other. Please leave a review or rating on iTunes or Spotify. It really helps us reach a wider audience. Lastly, I wanted to share with you that many of my coaching clients and listeners have created a cheat sheet with their key takeaways from the episodes. I invite you to consider jotting down 1 or 2 key takeaways as you navigate your amazing journey. Have a wonderful rest of the day and see you next week for another inspiring journey on Atlanta Diaries.